Hi, I'm Mark James. I've been in the ITIL, SIAM and ITSM space for over 25 years now. Please subscribe, hit the bell, like. I add videos on a regular basis. So let's get to it. Today I'm going to be talking about, you guessed it, the guiding principles within ITIL4. So for those of you that were familiar with ITIL3, you would remember that there were 9 guiding principles. In ITIL4, we have 7. So as a refresher, a guiding principle is a recommendation that guides an organisation in all circumstances, regardless of changes in goals, strategies, type of work or management. And also the guiding principles form part of the service value system, that SVS of ITIL4. So again, as a bit of a refresher, so hopefully by now you'll recognise the guiding principles: focus on value, start where you are, progress iteratively with feedback, collaboratively, promote visibility, think and work holistically, of course keep it simple, keep it practical, and automate and optimise where you can. So I'm just going to go through each one of those in a bit more detail. So focus on value. So everything an organisation does, it needs to map directly to value for stakeholders. So consider the customer service. So look at the value principle encompassing many different perspectives, not only sort of the IT element, if you like, or the financial element, looking at the experience of the customers and the users that are using that. So perhaps things to think about might be around what's the key driver for changing the structure. Is it important to ensure that we need to have this reviewed and referenced at each stage of transformation, perhaps, if we were thinking around organisational structure as an example, or perhaps if we're thinking from an Agile perspective, so a CI/CD perspective, what does focus on value mean there? So Agile development's intended to deliver early and continuous value to the customer. So have a think about that. You know, that's kind of, it's aligned into that ITIL4 principle. The second guiding principle around start where you are. So sounds pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised. You don't need to start from scratch. Consider what you've got at the moment. Are there systems? Is there technology? Are there people? Is there information that you can use? Okay, it's not the finished product, but is there certain systems you might be able to use that could help things? So that, think about services, think about processes, projects, any kind of IT programs, anything that can be used to create that desired outcome. Clearly, part of that activity of starting where you are involves the current state. So what should be investigated, what should be observed. Think about how you go about doing that. There's lots of different methods as to understanding the current as-is state. So observation, detailed investigation. Perhaps thinking from an organisational structure, perhaps you might want to think about what about some cultural aspects of an organisation. So is it a mature organisation or an immature organisation? What's the structure? Have you looked at value stream mapping, or my personal favourite, RACI matrices? Have those been put into place? Who's responsible? Who's accountable? Who do you need to consult with? Who do you need to keep informed? Those are really useful tools in terms of starting where you are and assessing the current state. and working out current roles and responsibilities. Or perhaps if we kind of stick the agile hat on, what does start where you are mean? So again, agile's built on the concept of continuous incremental development rather than large releases and lengthy development cycles. So perhaps it can be broken down into an incremental type activity. The third area for the guiding principles talks around progressing iteratively, so in small chunks. Don't try and do everything in one go. That's a recipe for disaster. Organise the work into smaller bits, into manageable elements, manageable sections that you know can be delivered and can be executed in time. Sure, it's not the whole big picture, but break it down. Look at how. Don't make it this huge initiative that must be accomplished. Look at it as small, iterative, smaller, manageable chunks that can be executed and completed in a timely manner. It's much easier to stay focused and to be sharper if you're looking at smaller chunks of activities, smaller chunks of effort. And then that feedback, again, really important. Make sure that there's a feedback mechanism there. So after each iteration, that any actions can be fine-tuned. Perhaps you need to refocus a tiny bit or change it a bit to the left or a bit to the right, or circumstances may change. So the iterative, particularly in terms of transition and transformational activities, you need to simplify them into manageable steps, particularly in large changing environments. And then the fourth guiding principle within ITIL4 is work collaboratively and promote that visibility. So work together across boundaries, whatever those boundaries may be. Look at achieving objectives. So those objectives are going to require data, they're going to require information, it's going to need understanding, it's also going to need trust. You need to get that buy-in, you need to make it relevant to all of those people within that ecosystem, in terms of making it relevant, allowing people to participate in that. You're much more likely to get long-term success if you work collaboratively. So also look and watch out for consequences. So are there any hidden agendas? For example, you want to try and avoid anybody who's got a hidden agenda in there. This is about collaboration, making sure that the information is shared widely, as wide as possible. Perhaps there's a technique for that somehow. Perhaps there's some technology that could be used. Is it an email update? Is it a newsletter? Is it an intranet? Is there a way of sharing that information and making that more visible and more out there? So, for example, a disagree and commit approach in which every stakeholder discusses their concerns. So, look for a way of getting an expected outcome in terms of an agreement. Get those changes progressing quickly. Typically, I like the term around open door policy. So leaders should adopt an open door policy and become more visible, becoming accessible. Organisational change is a big one, and again, that needs to be clearly defined and openly discussed in order to facilitate transparency. So the collaboration and visibility. And again, with my Agile hat on here, if we talk about collaboration and promoting visibility here, good agile product delivery requires effective visualization of work to all the various delivery participants, and it's a constant interaction with the consumer, with the end person of the delivered service. So then, if we move on to the think and work holistically. So nothing stands, no service, no element stands alone. Think of it as all of its parts rather than just the various elements. So in any service, you've got technology, you've got people, processes, partners, service providers, agreements, contracts, all of those. If you put those all together, you get there's a concerted effort in order to deliver that value. So don't try and look at a particular element in its own right. It's really important that all of those elements are not only coordinated, but make sure they're working in a collaborative manner, but being coordinated to provide that value, whatever that value may be. So the think and work holistically guiding principle, it is kind of it talks with the collaboration point earlier, and that all appropriate leaders and managers will ensure that risks are digested, they're understood, they're managed. Are there ways to mitigate some of those risks? It also helps on the to communicate a consistent message, so that there's nothing worse than having different managers or different leaders not, as I say, singing off the same hymn sheet, that it's not a consistent message about what the risks are or what progress is being made towards transformation. And then the keep it simple and practical. So as it sounds, look at everything. Don't overcomplicate things. It's really easy for organizations to overcomplicate things, to make it not practical, and you can get sort of buried in complexity. Does the process, does the service, does the action, does it provide value? Is it useful? Does it achieve what it needs to do? Ask those questions. Why are we doing this? So, for example, if a process or a service or an action or a metric fails to provide value or produces an outcome that is useful or it's meaningful or it provides value in some way, eliminate it. Ask the question, why are we doing that? If it's not producing value or it's not producing an outcome that is needed, get rid of it. Ask those questions. Why are we doing that? If a procedure, in the same way, if a procedure or a process, does it use the minimal number of steps necessary in order to complete your objective? Ask that question. Look at it, map it out. You'll certainly come across processes or procedures and ask, why are we doing it that way? What's that actually bit? Is that part of the outcome, or is that delivering value? Is that waste? Also, always use outcome-based thinking to produce practical solutions that deliver. What is it you're trying to deliver? You're trying to deliver value. You're trying to deliver results. So be practical about it. Outcome-based thinking. Ask those questions. So the keep it simple and the practical is a real favourite of mine, because the complexity within an organisation can come in very, very quickly. And look at that flow. Is there a way to be more efficient, more effective? Can we improve that? Can we make that more? Can we deliver more value? So a really good example, and I'm thinking of a particular organisation I worked at a few years back, was the one of the leaders within the IT service function encouraged self-organisation. Now, what does that mean? That basically meant that decisions, actions were made, where people had that ability to make those decisions without it having to go to management, if you like. So there was actions, there were decisions, there were clearly rules and guidelines, and there was criteria that had been set. But as long as it met these particular levels of decision making, that we were allowed to sort of get on with things. So again, a real positive step in that, keeping it simple, keep it practical. The element within Agile, just very briefly talking about the keep it simple and keep it practical. Agile is founded on the principle of lean. So what that looks at are things like waste. So elimination of waste, anything that is low value, anything that's not delivering results, anything that's not delivering value or has a value of some kind, if it's non-productive, the term waste and elimination starts to come into play really quickly in Agile, CI and CD. So the whole area of keep it simple, keep it practical. And then the final point is around automation and optimization. So review repetitive activities. Look for opportunities to improve. Now, what does improve mean? Improve could mean it's become more accurate, it's become more efficient, there's less work effort needed, there's less time needed. It pushes some questions into play around, is human intervention really needed? Could we work out some kind of automation? How can we optimize that? So there's lots of ways of kind of looking at that. What's wasteful? What's really not helpful to us? If we need it, fine, but can we automate it? Can we make it easier so it's contributing to value rather than just being this large activity that takes a lot of time? So wherever you can, wherever possible, any kind of tasks, any kind of activities should be consolidated or automated to reduce waste. So think about that Agile principle we just spoke about a minute ago in terms of keeping it simple, keeping it practical. Think about the Agile. How can things be? How can we reduce waste? And human intervention should only occur where it's delivering value fundamentally. So again, if we look at the Agile environment and look at what that says from an ITIL4 perspective around so CI and CD with ITIL, optimize and automation. So you've got continuous feedback loops and reduction of toil. These are good practice Agile items. So reduction of toil. I love that expression. So when you work with CI/CD processes and teams are responsible for them, individuals and teams should actively look for those opportunities to enhance their success. So they should seek those opportunities, actively look for them, rather than just taking a kind of a presumption that changes progressing through the CI/CD pipeline need to be controlled. There might be better ways of doing those changes. Has anyone asked that question? it's important just to kind of have an open and an honest and an upfront way of looking at automation and optimization. Ask those questions. Should we consider, is there a better way to enable those changes? So that's kind of come to the end of my overview on the ITIL guiding principles. Key takeaway, there are 7 guiding principles. Focus on value, start where you are, progress iteratively with feedback, collaborate, promote visibility, think and work holistically, keep it simple, keep it practical. And then the final one is automate and optimize. Thank you very much. Please do subscribe to my channel. I have lots of information and lots of updates, all relating to ITIL, service management, ITSM and SIAM. Thank you.